A black woman had coffee poured on her by a racist cop, but little did he know she was the mother of a famous lawyer. The coffee didn't burn nearly as much as the hatred in his eyes. That was the first thing she noticed, not the steaming liquid sliding down her blouse, not the gasp of the crowd, but the quiet venom in the way the cop smirked. Gloria Jennings had survived worse. Born in Mississippi in 1964, she knew what racism looked like. She had seen it carved into sidewalks and whispered through clenched teeth. But in 2025, in broad daylight, outside a bustling New York cafe, she hadn't expected to become a viral moment for the worst reasons. It started like any ordinary Wednesday. Gloria was on her way to visit her granddaughter, picking up her favorite cinnamon latte from her usual spot on 5th and Lexington. She wore her church best white blouse, navy skirt, pearls that once belonged to her mother. She had just stepped out of the shop when a tall, square-jawed police officer bumped into her. Hard. The paper cup flew from her hands. Hot coffee splattered across her chest and stomach, soaking her blouse instantly. Her gasp was loud. Pain flared through her skin. Then came a laughter. Not from the crowd, but from the officer. "Well, look at that," he said. "Guess I should have known better than to trust a woman like you to hold a cup steady." "A woman like you." The words were soft but deadly. Gloria blinked, stunned. She looked around, waiting for someone to speak up, someone to step in. But the bystanders only stared, paralyzed by the uniform, the badge, the unspoken threat. "You bumped into me," Gloria said calmly, pressing a napkin to her soaked chest. "You spilled the coffee." The cop tilted his head. "You got a problem, lady?" There it was. The challenge. The bait. "No," she said. "But you do." That was when someone started recording. A young woman in a red beanie lifted her phone, angling it just right to catch Gloria's dignity standing tall against the blue wall of authority. The cop noticed. His face twitched. "You better walk away," he said, voice lowering, "or I'll find a reason to detain you." "For what?" Gloria asked. "Being black on a Wednesday?" A few murmurs rippled through the crowd. The officer, whose badge read S. Halberd, stepped closer. His coffee cup still full hung loosely in his right hand. Maybe disorderly conduct. Maybe resisting arrest. Depends how feisty you get. Then, right there, as casually as flicking a light switch, he tipped his coffee forward. The lid popped off, and the brown liquid splashed down her front again. Gasps erupted. Gloria didn't move. She just stared up at him, her eyes clear and sharp. "That's assault," someone shouted. "Was it on camera?" Another voice asked. "Yes," said the girl in the red beanie. "I got it. All of it." Halbert suddenly looked less sure of himself. But it was too late. Within minutes, the clip hit Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. By noon, it had 4.3 million views. By evening, national news anchors were replaying it on every channel. But Halbert didn't know the real storm was coming. Because the next morning, a black Tesla Model S pulled up outside the NYPD's Internal Affairs office. The woman who stepped out wore a tailored suit and heels sharp enough to cut marble. Her name was Maya Jennings. She was Gloria's daughter, and she was one of the most feared civil rights attorneys in the state of New York. Maya didn't knock on the door when she entered. She walked straight in. "I'm here about Officer Halbert," she said. "You've got about 12 hours to suspend him before I file a federal civil rights lawsuit so large it'll make your grandchildren's pensions weep." The detective behind the desk blinked. "And you are?" "Maya Jennings, counsel to my mother. You might have seen Hershey's currently trending under the hashtag caffeine and hate." He swallowed. "Right, of course." It was only the beginning. Act 1 had set the stage. A racist cop, a quiet woman, and a flashpoint of injustice. Now came Act 2, the war in court. The civil suit hit within days. Maya filed it with precision, naming not only Officer Halbert, but also the NYPD for failure to discipline repeat offenders. Turns out, Halbert had 3 prior complaints for racially biased conduct. None had made it past internal review. Now, they were coming back like ghosts in the night. Media descended like vultures. Interviews, protests, think pieces. Gloria's face, dignified and defiant, became the symbol of resilience. She didn't speak to the press. She didn't need to. Maya did all the speaking. "This is not about coffee," Maya said during a CNN interview. "This is about power, about humiliation, about how a black woman in America still isn't safe from the people paid to protect her." Halbert's lawyers tried to spin it. It was an accident, they claimed. He stumbled. But the video told a different story. Slow motion showed the deliberate tilt of his wrist, the smug grin, the faint flicker of pride. In court, Maya didn't hold back. She showed the jury the video. Then she showed them Gloria's burn scars photographed 3 hours after the incident. Then she told them about 1964, about a child hiding behind a couch while white men burned a cross across the street, about marching in Selma, about how Gloria had taught her daughter not to fight with fists, but with law. "She raised me to believe that justice isn't a dream," Maya said in her closing statement. "It's a decision, one we make here, now." The courtroom was silent. And yet, as the first week of the trial ended, something strange began to happen. Anonymous tips, emails. One by one, people started sending in footage. Old recordings, cell phone videos from past encounters with Officer Halbert. One, in particular, stood out. A black teenager, handcuffed for jaywalking. Halbert's voice, cold and clipped. "You people always act like the law doesn't apply to you." That clip made it into the trial, too. And Gloria, quietly watching from the gallery, finally allowed herself a small smile. Because she could feel it, the shift, the weight of decades lifting just slightly. Act 3, the final chapter, was coming. It would be about redemption. The courtroom was packed on the 7th day. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but that didn't stop the press from camping outside in tents like it was the Grammys. Inside, though, things had changed. You could feel it, not just in the jury's eyes, which were now narrower, more skeptical when Halbert's lawyers spoke, but in the way the judge leaned forward ever so slightly during Maya's cross-examinations. Maya called her next witness a surprise. A former NYPD officer named Caleb Rosario, retired 2 years prior, now working private security. He took the stand solemnly, not eager, but not fearful either. "Mr. Rosario," Maya began, "how long did you serve with Officer Halbert?" 8 years, he said, 2 of them as his direct partner. "And in those 2 years, did you ever witness behavior that might be considered racially biased?" His hesitation was brief. "Yes," he said, "multiple times." Gasps from a gallery. The judge banged his gavel. "Order." Maya didn't flinch. "Can you give us an example?" "There was a stop in Queens," Rosario said. "Black man walking home from work. Halbert said he fit the description, which was vague, just black male in a hoodie. The man had a grocery bag in one hand and a paycheck stub in the other. Halbert cuffed him anyway. Said better safe than sorry. I filed a concern. Nothing came of it." Maya let the silence hang there for a beat. "No disciplinary acción." "None." "And how many other complaints were buried like that? Would you guess?" "Dozens." She turned to the jury. "Dozens." Halbert's defense squirmed. They tried objecting, leading, speculative. Overruled. Overruled. Sustained once, but by then, the damage was done. Outside the courtroom, Gloria sat on a bench, sunglasses shielding her eyes from the glare of flashing cameras. She wasn't doing interviews, but the people kept coming, supporters, strangers, survivors. Some brought flowers. Others simply offered their stories. "I saw the video," one woman said, her voice cracking. "That's happened to me too. Just not with coffee. With words. With looks." A man added, "My daughter's 12. She asked me if police were allowed to hurt black women. What do I even say to that?" Gloria listened. She held their hands. And in doing so, she became something she never set out to be, a symbol. Not of anger, but of quiet revolution. Back in court, Maya was circling in for the kill. Halbert took the stand on the 9th day. He walked like he still owned the room. Shoulders squared, jaw clenched, badge shining despite being suspended. But Maya wasn't fazed. She knew men like him. She'd studied them in books, faced them in court, felt their shadows in every dark alley of the law. "Officer Halbert," she began, "do you believe you treated my mother fairly?" He didn't look at Gloria. "Yes." "You bumped into her, correct?" "It was accidental." "And then, seconds later, you poured your coffee on her." "I didn't pour it. It slipped." She stepped closer. You smiled when it happened. That's not true. The video shows you smirking. Maybe I was nervous. Is that your usual reaction to nervousness, smiling after scalding a civilian? He shifted. I didn't mean to hurt her. But you didn't apologize either. Silence. Did you, Officer Halberd? No, he muttered. Why not? Because she was being disrespectful. To your authority? He nodded. Maya let that hang. So to clarify, in your mind, when a black woman asserts herself after being physically bumped into and verbally threatened, that's disrespect? His lawyer objected. Argumentative. Sustained, the judge said, but the question had already settled like dust on a shelf. Maya backed off, satisfied. The final blow came not from her, but from someone unexpected. A 16-year-old boy named Elijah. He had been watching from the back of the courtroom all week, hoodie low, eyes wide. On the final day of testimony, he stood up, quietly, calmly. Your Honor, he said, may I speak? The courtroom froze. The judge looked surprised, then intrigued. And you are? Elijah Grant. I was arrested by Officer Halberd last year for skateboarding in a parking lot. Maya's head whipped around. Objection, Your Honor, Halberd's lawyer barked. This is highly irregular. The judge held up a hand, approached the bench. A brief, whispered conference. Then the judge leaned back and nodded. I'll allow a brief statement. Elijah walked to the front, stood beside the witness box. His voice was steady, but his hand shook. He slammed me against a wall, he said. Told me if I ever acted urban again in public, I'd regret it. I told my mom, but she was scared to press charges. Said it wouldn't go anywhere. He looked over at Gloria. Then I saw what happened to you. And I realized, maybe it could go somewhere now. That was the moment the tide turned fully. It wasn't just about coffee anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. It was about all the times before and all the ones still to come unless something changed. The trial ended on a Friday. Closing arguments were fiery. Maya stood before the jury, her tone deliberate, almost reverent. Every system that has ever protected injustice depends on silence. It needs us quiet, embarrassed, divided. It needs us to believe that one incident doesn't matter, that this was just coffee. But history has shown yous again and again that every movement begins with one moment. One woman standing up. One person refusing to be humiliated. She pointed at her mother. That's my mother. She taught me to read using court transcripts because we couldn't afford picture books. She marched so I could speak here today. And she stood still not because she was afraid, but because she's braver than most of us will ever be. She turned to the jury. This is your moment. Don't let it be just coffee. The jury deliberated for 2 days. On Sunday afternoon, they returned. Have you reached a verdict? The judge asked. The foreman stood. We have. The courtroom held its breath. In the matter of Jennings versus Halberd and the NYPD, we find in favor of the plaintiff. On all counts. A gasp, then quiet sobs. Then applause the judge couldn't quite silence. Gloria closed her eyes. Not from relief, but from gratitude. Her hands folded in her lap. Dignified. Still, Halberd was fired. Officially. Disgraced. The NYPD issued a public apology. A civil review board was formed as part of the settlement. Maya made sure it had teeth. Real ones. But the biggest change wasn't legal. It was cultural. Within weeks, police departments around the country began holding de-escalation seminars focused specifically on racial sensitivity. The video became required viewing in several training academies. And Elijah? He started a youth advocacy group called Just Coffee. Their mission, document, share, and resist racial injustice one story at a time. One afternoon, weeks later, Maya and Gloria sat on the stoop of Gloria's brownstone. Summer sun painted their faces gold. Was that justice? Gloria asked, sipping iced tea. It's a start, Maya said. Gloria nodded. It was never about me, you know. It's about the next woman. The next boy. I know. They sat in silence. 2 generations woven together by struggle and triumph. I saw you on CNN again, Gloria teased. Oh God, Maya laughed. What did I say? You said coffee should never be political. Maya shrugged. It shouldn't. Gloria smiled. But sometimes, she said, it's the spark that lights the fire. 3 months after the verdict, the city was different. Maybe not in obvious ways. Racism doesn't vanish with a headline or a courtroom cheer, but the undercurrent had shifted. People talked. They remembered. They whispered the names of victims not yet heard. And more importantly, they acted. Gloria Jennings became an unintentional hero. She didn't want a statue. She didn't want a book deal. She just wanted peace. But peace is stubborn when you've made the world uncomfortable. Her image appeared on murals in Harlem, on banners at protests, in hashtags beside names like Rosa and Brianna and Sandra. Strength in silence. One mural read, showing her mid-stand, coffee dripping, eyes unwavering. Yet behind the applause, Gloria was tired. The kind of tired that sinks into your bones, not from age, but from carrying the weight of history. She went back to her routine church, grocery runs, visits with her granddaughter. But nothing was ever truly routine again. Not when strangers stopped her on the sidewalk. Not when teenagers asked for selfies like she was Beyoncé with a Bible. One evening, after church choir practice, Gloria sat alone in the pews. Her hymn book rested on her lap, unopened. The sanctuary was quiet, save for the hum of fluorescent lights. She closed her eyes. "How many more?" she whispered. She wasn't talking to God out of doubt, but exhaustion. Then footsteps. She turned. A young white woman in her 20s stood at the back of the church, clutching her purse awkwardly. "Mrs. Jennings?" she asked. "I'm sorry to bother you." Gloria nodded. "Come." The girl walked slowly, clearly nervous. "I just wanted to say, thank you. My younger brother, he's biracial. And I've seen the way people look at him, the way they act. I didn't know how real it was until I saw your story." Gloria nodded slowly, watching her. "I showed the video to my parents," the girl continued. "We talked for hours. I think I know it changed something. In them. In me." Gloria reached out, took the girl's hand. "Keep that fire," she said. "Keep talking. That's how it ends, not with noise, but with truth whispered long enough that it echoes." The girl smiled, tears rising, then quietly slipped out into the night. Meanwhile, Maya Jennings had returned to her courtroom grind, but everything had changed for her too. Big law firms came knocking. So did television producers. Netflix pitched a limited series. She turned it down. "This isn't a drama," she told them. "It's reality, and it's still happening." She took on new cases pro bono, civil rights, wrongful arrests. She began mentoring young lawyers, many of them from the same streets where Halberd once patrolled. Her name became shorthand for fire and fairness. If you're in trouble, one tweet read, "Pray Maya Jennings hears your story." But even Maya, sharp and steel-willed, had her limits. She missed dinners. She slept with case files on her chest. Some nights, she dreamed of courtrooms flooding with coffee. One morning, her daughter Lila asked her, "Mommy, why do people hate Grandma?" Maya knelt to her level. "They don't hate Grandma. They hate what she makes them see about themselves." "Like a mirror?" "Exactly." Lila thought for a moment. "I think Grandma's a superwoman." Maya smiled. "So do I." The true test of legacy, though, came quietly. It wasn't in news cycles or awards. It came one humid July afternoon in a high school civics class on the Lower East Side. A teacher named Mr. King, inspired by the trial, had restructured his entire syllabus around Gloria's case. The final project? One story, one law. Find an injustice, draft a law to address it. One student, Marcus, 17, brilliant, but often angry, presented his final project last. He stood in front of the class, heart hammering, and pulled up a slide titled Jennings Bill. "It's a proposal," he said, "for a federal mandate requiring all police departments to publish records of internal misconduct investigations. Not just convictions, not just settlements. All of it. Public. Transparent. No more secrets." He clicked to the next slide. It showed Officer Halberd's sealed complaints. If this law existed 5 years ago, Marcus said, he would have been off the force before he touched Mrs. Jennings. The class fell silent. Then applause. A clip of his presentation made it to Maya's inbox that evening. She watched it 3 times, tears pricking her eyes. Change, she realized, wasn't loud. It was cumulative, compounding. A week later, she and Gloria flew to D.C. Senator Elaine Garvey had introduced a version of the Jennings bill on the Senate floor. It was early stages, but it had bipartisan support. The language was clear, the stakes undeniable. Gloria sat behind the senator as she read the bill aloud, her eyes wet but steady. Outside the Capitol, a reporter asked Gloria, "What does this moment mean to you?" Gloria looked at the dome, grand and gleaming in the sun. "It means," she said softly, "that one cup of coffee can spill across a nation if it's hot enough." 18 months later, the world kept turning. The trial was no longer trending. The hashtags had faded, but the law passed. The Jennings Transparency Act was signed into federal law by the president herself. Departments resisted, of course. Some fought it. Others embraced it. But the line had moved. Justice had stretched. Gloria spent her 62nd birthday with her granddaughter, braiding her hair and telling her stories about women who stood still and changed everything. Halberd, now stripped of his badge, tried suing for defamation. He lost. His name became a cautionary tale at the academy. One rookie was overheard whispering, "If you pull a Halberd, your career's dead." The words didn't come from vengeance. They came from vigilance. And Maya? She founded the Jennings Institute for Legal Equity, offering scholarships to Black law students and funding civil cases across the country. Her motto hung in the marble lobby, "Dignity is not negotiable." At the dedication ceremony, Maya stood beside her mother. They held hands as the mayor cut the ribbon. The crowd chanted their names. But Gloria leaned in and whispered, "This isn't about me." "I know," Maya replied. "It's about making sure it never has to be anyone else again." That night, Maya asked her mother, "If you could go back, would you still walk into that cafe?" Gloria was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I'd walk slower. Make sure they saw me. Every wrinkle, every line, every inch of who I am. Because sometimes the world needs a mirror it can't turn away from." She smiled. "And sometimes coffee is just the beginning."